Hey everybody, check out Pajama Life, House of the Dragon review.
Sir Ricard, I wish to go out.
There are older things in this world than you or I or living memory.
You are not the player, but a piece on the board.
I wish you to go to Harrenhal. Find out his intentions. Whether he means to raise a host for me or for himself.
I have received rumor of the dragon's sea smoke with the rider.
You need us more than we need you.
I need you to fly with Dreamfire to battle.
I won't burn anyone.
It isn't the question.
Will you burn me as you did Aegon?
For every one of us who falls, 100 of them, there will be no mercy!
Oh man, here we are. We just had to come on the next day because it was so much we wanted to talk about and get devoted its own show with Pajama Life and the crew. Quickly introduce yourselves, guys.
Hey everybody, great to be with. Oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Nope, you're going.
I jumped in. Hey everybody, it's David. Great to be with you. Looking forward to talking about the House of the Dragon or Rising Sun or whatever we're talking about tonight. We're here.
And this guy, Patrick, who's actually read all the books.
I have read all the books. I even assigned one of George R. R. Martin in my library to the right of me here. Really great to be here. I want to talk about this. Some good stuff. All right. Well, let's check it out.
It is a blockbuster. But is it a 70-minute ad for the next season? David, tell me what you think as I drink my Game of Thrones wine.
Well, and I'll see your Game of Thrones wine with a custom Brianna head on a Captain Phasma body here, just to celebrate the show with us tonight. So got her with me to lead this. This show, this episode, in what has been a really fun season, was what I would describe a bridge to far, or maybe a bridge to nowhere. Everything was prelude with this episode. There was a lot of exposition. There was a lot of moving the pieces on the board, on the chessboard for what is going to take place in the next season. But when is that next season? Yeah. It's a massive, it's not so much a cliffhanger like a Who Shot JR, showing my age, but a comeback to wait for season 3. A lot of neat stuff, but not the drama that one would expect for a season finale in my mind.
Well, and that I hear that it's going to be 2026. And I hear that there's only going to be 4 seasons. So then there's one more after this. So it's not going to be, 7-8 years, but it's only going to be 4 seasons to wrap this part of the story up. And Pat, what did you think of the show? And not just this episode, but the last episode we also haven't had a chance to talk about. What did you think of the prior episode and this episode?
Well, I got to say, this has been a pretty good season overall. I mean, it has definitely had good character development. You start caring about people. You get all the Aemons, Aegons, and all the other names a little confused sometimes, which is, just the nature of fantasy names on every book you ever read. So same thing. Really wonderful character development. You start seeing motivations. You're starting to see some good, that George R. R. Martin plot development that is so good about whatever he did, except for those last 2 seasons, which he just kind of, needed a check, needed a new plane or something. I don't know, from the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. But really wonderfully done stuff. And you're right, this was all, the last episode specifically was all about setting up going forward, because they definitely put you a big cliffhanger here. I suspect to a certain extent because they know it's going to be a couple years before they come out with the next one. They're going to want people to really be still going, wanting to be part of the whole show. And, and I suspect part of it is because they had some weird things happen during the pandemic, which made everybody slow down. A lot of these actors are trying to book other gigs. They know this is a limited run, so they're just trying to think their big career. So, I'm sure that scheduling issues were incredible for them to get this to the point where they are. So, but man, I really dug it. I was glad to see them kind of tying in the overarching story of, the Song of Fire and Ice. You even saw some imagery that was very much from the Game of Thrones series to show that, yes, we need to understand where we are in this big picture. And, so I'm there for that. I really liked this season. It was really well done, I thought.
Okay, so overall, I thought the season was really wonderful, and you got to see more in-depth natures of different characters I wasn't expecting to. Two standouts is Sir Strong, the Castellan. He was hilarious and a good dude. So I'm really hoping he comes back next season because he was just hilarious to watch. And I understand they needed the kind of lightness of the pirate lady, the pirate captain, that whole scene in Essos, because I felt like that also set up as to why the Lannisters became so powerful, because they had that agreement with the Essos people and those smaller islands that were also the shipbuilders and were rich. So I thought that was, at first I was kind of like, man, this is some filler, and get to the, is there going to be no dragon fights? But then when I went back and watched it again, that scene is a setup for future about the Lannister family. So I thought that was pretty cool. And as well, okay, let's talk about some of the, it's going to be some spoilers. So if you haven't watched it yet, which, come on now, you should have watched it by now, then you might turn it up, but come back and watch it afterwards. And then you can leave your comments below. But first, let's talk about the worst mother in Westeros. What's up with you, girl? What's up with her? David, talk about.
This was a fascinating scene here to kind of end the show when the two, lead female, heroines in the story get together. And, is she hedging her bets, or does she realize the error in her ways only because she's been dismissed from her own council? She's seen where one son kicked out her dad, who was in a jail. The other son is dismissing her. Clearly, we're seeing how things have gone wrong in this. It's fascinating, though, just how people you'll make a decision, right, wrong, or other. You make a decision, and you will be haunted and trapped by it as you go forward. There's no turning back. And she probably had an opportunity a few episodes ago, when Rhaenyra went to King's Landing.
Please, let's stop this.
And she was like,
ugly and crazy.
And then she gets the son, as Barbecue Ken. Turns into the Barbecue Ken doll.
How you gonna say, if somebody says, well, I got to kill your son, right? Cut his head off and show everybody. So, what up with that? And she like, well, he's sick and dying anyway, so
how about that?
Like, are you kidding? What'd you think of that?
Well, there's a couple ways you can look at that. and none of them are good. But you know, this is what those people in those, at least in the mythical world of Westeros, it seems like the people that get that high up really don't care. And the thing is, Rhaenyra had a good point. You know, your son killed my son.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so now I guess we need to talk, because son for son. So yours is, you know, mine got killed on the dragon by yours. So let's see what we can do with making this. If you want this to go away, here's what we can do. We'll balance the scales, call it good, call it a mulligan on your part. You can go wander the world and, like, you know, kung fu or whatever, and just do your thing. But yeah, she's not great. She's not
the worst.
I don't know. I mean, Cersei Lannister back in the original Game of Thrones, she might be the worst.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that
with
this
her,
is a good.
with her kids though, with Cersei with
oh
her
my God,
kids.
yes. Oh God, yes.
Yeah. Hey, you don't get romantic on top of your kid's coffin. That does make you the worst.
Well, she didn't actually murder or try to attempt to murder her children. She did love her children, but Alicent actively is trying to murder her children, and that is crazy.
To be fair,
I don't think she was actively. I don't think she was actively. She wasn't
what
actively.
What are you talking about?
She was pushed. She was pushed into a corner by previous choices she had made.
Because you don't get a job, you then go, "Oh, I want my kid dead." I mean, come on now.
Well, to me, when you say active, it's like she's going around going, "Okay, now when's he going to be asleep? I'm going to stab him." That's actively killing, in my opinion. Whereas this is like,
no,
okay,
that's why they call it, like, you could get like time in jail for setting the murder in motion. So come on, man! Did you watch Law and Order?
Not as much as you, apparently. Yeah, I mean, it's just, well, you know, the difference between conspiracy for homicide versus actual homicide, first degree, is different.
Well, who knows? Given her activities right now, she might go in there with the pillow and smother the poor boy, or give him too much milk of the poppy and get rid of him. Yeah, she's trash.
She's not.
She gets the award for trash, and I can understand her. Okay, second trash person on the show. Tell me what you all think of Aemond and Helena in that scene. Pat, what did you think of the first scene and then the second scene with Aemond and Helena?
I was kind of glad to see her grow a backbone, to be honest. I mean, just like,
yeah,
I'm not going to go kill people just because it's convenient for you. You done made some mistakes, and this is not my job to get you out of these mistakes. Yeah. And him threatening, well, I could have you killed. And she's like, well, then, you know, you'll be short of dragon, but feel free to let me know how that works out for you, kind of thing. And you know what? She figured it out. This guy is very insecure. He is acting out because he can right now. And you know, the fact that he got away with the brother thing, man. Yeah, he's pretty bad too. He's always been bad though throughout the whole thing. I mean, come on. Yeah. Every show on the face of the earth, you put a guy in an eye patch, they're not going to be good for the most part, except for Nick Fury.
That's true. There might be just an evil twin of a good guy, but they're always the bad guy.
And I want to say, even so, he's even though Nick Fury's a good guy, he has some really questionable methods. So let's just go with that.
Yeah. David, what did you think of the scene with Aemond and Helena?
Well, again, I think the phrase "bad parenting" just comes to mind at any time you see these folks. But yeah, he is clearly a villain, and he is trying to hold on at all costs, very desperate. And you know, she was very matter of fact. You know, I liked that play, and it showed, you know, he can huff and he can puff, but there's even limits. He sees the limitations that he has, and is feeling it. He is certainly one of the true villains in this story. And while there's been some things that tensions could have eased, his character and his character's decisions through the course of both seasons really have kind of led us to this point.
Yeah.
Once he killed the one son, all of that stuff, things really were not going to end. This was a kind of a Archduke Ferdinand kind of moment when he killed the son, I guess at the end of season 1. And here we are in this war that no one can seemingly wants to or will put the brakes on as we go.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, David, that he tried it with Helena and he didn't realize, although she's kind of like a fairy kind of fae kind of person, she got a backbone of steel. She was able to say, no, I'm not doing that. And by the way, you keep going, you're going to be dead. Well, I'll kill you. Well, so what? You're still going to be dead. I was like, go Helena. I mean, as much pressure as he was putting on her, she was just looking at him like, you can't make me do this, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Which most people might have crumpled if this kind of person came up to him like that. So she was like, you can't do nothing. So go somewhere else with that.
Yeah.
And I love that for her character. I loved it. That I didn't. And let's talk about Daemon. And
oh, wow.
Daemon's transformation throughout the series, throughout this season. Which from what I understand, and Pat, you can correct me, Daemon, I guess and Daemon goes to Harrenhal is how it was in the books. And then that was it. And then nothing was actually said about his time in Harrenhal. So this is all new material.
Oh, right. I mean, the books were the books are just from such a 1,000-foot view. I mean, they're not going to go into exacts. And they've given it enough of a space to have a little bit of artistic license. And they've done nothing so far to contradict anything that I remember reading. Of course, it's been a couple of years since I read that book. Yeah. But I do like what they're doing with Matt Smith's character, man. I got to tell you. He is one of the standouts as far as just being able to play that crazy. I'm not sure if I'm really, really seeing this or is this right or what. I mean, my stupid favorite character is the one of the new dragon riders, the one that's just a goofy, dumb.
Oh,
guy.
Let's come back to Elf, because I got some words about that. But Daemon's transformation, I think, in this season has been really interesting to see him go from arrogant, I know it, I'm really the one who's the victim here because I should be king, to the arc of him being humbled in Harrenhal with all the visions and the things that are happening, which needed to happen in order for him to understand his place in the whole fabric of it. And I don't think that he would have gotten to that place where he ended up if he hadn't been humbled and made to understand that, hey, it's not always being the first person. Sometimes you have to play a supporting role, which is just as important as the main character. And so him seeing that, I think, was really great. Although I don't understand why he had to sleep with his mama, though. I didn't understand. That was totally unnecessary to me.
Well, he's a Targaryen.
To happen. That was gross.
It's Targaryen. It's what they do.
Yeah.
That is clearly the number one thing in the Westeros. What is it? Porn letter.
She and Viserys, Vizzy T, were a true love match, and so they did. Although weren't they related? Hold on, weren't they? They were cousins. So
I think there are a lot
still related.
Something cousins.
They're still related, but yeah, seeing him finally come to grips with, I need to be her background instead of being in the foreground was really a great moment, I think, in this season too. David, what did you think of Daemon's transformation?
I think the whole story that was really kind of separate, that, so many of these characters are interacting and impacting one another. Daemon is really just having his own psychosis, his own haunting in Harrenhal with himself, and then the owl witch lady. I mean, that was, part of me wondered even if she was there for parts of it.
Yeah, she was there.
Three-eyed
She
raven?
was there.
What's that?
Could be the three-eyed raven. The three-eyed raven to a certain extent too. From you saw the heart tree, you saw the visions of the future. I mean, the children of the forest, as it were, in Game of Thrones, time was not a constraint for them as far as being able to see visions of the past and visions of the future. So
that was some great stuff. But I think Matt Smith was has been fantastic in this show, and the Halloween-esque aspect to these hauntings and getting him to this place has been some of the really undersold but incredibly powerful parts of the show. This is where, and the fact that I didn't know this, but the fact that this is something that the showrunners have brought to life versus kind of the backstory in the books, it really speaks to the intelligence of the writing and the storyline and the thoughtfulness that we're seeing here. Not that we need to do a compare contrast with other programs that we've watched, but this takes it to a serious level to challenge you in a lot of ways. And it was just brilliant. It's brilliant. Taking a backseat to this, I would just a question for you all, but Corlys, Stephen Toussaint, who I thought was just incredible in season one. A wonderful actor. We know where Pijama's coming from with Corlys. I have really loved his scenes with his sons in this.
Ooh, that scene at the waterfront.
At the dock,
That should be an Emmy nominated scene for both of them. And so what I listened to an interview with them, and I don't know. I don't know the actor who plays Alan's real name, but most of that was improvised. So he, had his lines, and then when Corlys said, "You're dismissed," he said, "Oh, something just came over me, and I just went with what I said." And I was like, woo, brother, you did it right there. That was so powerful for and then Steve Toussaint's face, his emotion, that it would look like that one tear was trying not to come out of his eye, because being confronted with, the damage you did and your ambitions. And I think that was his arc this season, was Corlys's journey was having also, well, if you think about it, there was a lot of humbling of those two characters throughout the season. David, what did you think of that?
Well, a powerful scene, and I'm a huge fan of Stephen Toussaint through this. Your statement, though, on this humbling, that is a theme that we've seen with multiple characters in this. Everyone, you could argue, has had a moment of having to kind of come back and eat some humble pie. Rhaenyra even had to do that as she looked at her kingdom was falling apart, didn't know about Daemon. We talked about Daemon. Corlys here, Alicent, the king, is it Aegon? Is that sound pronounced? Okay, so Aegon, and even a little bit with Aemon, and recently here in these episodes, you've seen a lot of people. The new hand of the king, the old hand of the king. Everybody has really been humbled in this situation where events have overtaken.
Yeah. And okay, David. Okay, great. There's David. But also, let's talk about some of the lighter moments. Ulf and Hugh and the goofiness of their scenes. What did you all, Pat, you liked Off. What did you think of him?
Well, I like him, but I'm not, without, and to be honest, I can't remember exactly. I'm going to bet that that's not going to work out great giving him a dragon. On a lot of levels.
Seems like one of those dudes. If you offered him a candy bar, he'd be like, "Okay, I'm on your side now." I mean, he just, or one of those irritating people who are always think they're funny and trying to be funny, but they're not, and they're inappropriate all the time. That sounds like that.
He's going to be a problem. I have a feeling, and the thing is. The other one's full of anger. He's full of idiocy. I mean, and then you got the one who took Sea Smoke, and he's He's got his stuff together. I'm just saying. He seems like he's the only one that realizes what this is. The other one's so angry, and that's maybe what drew his dragon to him. And something else that just hit me when I was watching these and talking and looking at how the dragons chose the riders when they just here's some food and a couple riders in here somewhere. Pick what you want. When they did that, when they did the choosing in the episode before, it reminded me a lot of an author I used to read a lot of, Anne McCaffrey, who did the Dragons of Pern. And what they did is they were telepathic dragons, and you would show up at the hatching, and the dragon would choose the rider, and they were linked for life. And that seems to be like they almost took that exactly from Anne McCaffrey. So maybe George R. R. Martin's doing a little plagiarism. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that happens in a lot of dragon literature, though, because some of the dragon stories I've read, that's been the case too. Is that
she was probably one of the first. She started writing in the 60s. So yeah, I mean, she might have been the one who started this whole thing. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'll use it." But it was just one of those things that kind of hit me with that whole thing about how these dragons just picked these two dudes out of the 40 that were there and ate the other 38,
Like Silverwing, she just was like, "Hey, cutie, how you doing? I've been looking for somebody to hang out with. Come on, let's ride." And he's like, "Cool, let's ride." You're two goofballs, I think. And but Hugh and his Vermithor. But Hugh also had a lot of sense. He knew how to behave in polite company, whereas the other dude is like, well,
raised in the tap house.
Yeah, raised in it's even worse than the tap house. I mean, you at least gotta be okay with people. This guy was he was being a total jerk. So
he was a jackass. I mean, Ulf is exactly the example of someone who he was exactly where he needed to be. The loudmouth, with no one taken seriously. He's kind of like the Cliff Clavin of King's Landing. But now you've given this guy, the power of a flying atom bomb. And that is not going to end well. He has not had that kind of power, and it is going to his head, and it is not going to end well for him and whoever gets near him.
They need to get rid of him real quick. Yeah. But Adam is like, "Look, I got a good thing here, and I'm going to make it work. Whatever happens, I'm making it work." Yep. And Hugh is like, "You know what? What's needed?" He's a blue collar dude. Like, "I got this good job. Let me make sure that, I keep it, and I'm going to do what's right so that I can get myself together." So, but the other guy is like, "Effing this is mine. This is me. I'm special."
We got a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah, he'd be the lottery ticket dude who was broke like 2 months after he got the $1 million. He
really would. That's perfect. That's a perfect example of who would want.
Yes, that's a great one, Pat. But now let's talk about Rhaenyra, right? What did you all think of Rhaenyra throughout the season? Pat, what'd you think?
She she spent a lot of the season trying to figure out what her limits of her power was. It seemed like, like can she order people? Can she let them step on her? Can she? And then at the end, you see her in the last episodes, especially. You see her. I'm the queen. I will tell you what you think. I don't need to know what you think at this point, because you've done told me enough. Thanks. Okay, noted. Moving on. You know, and then like that last scene with her and Daemon, or yes, Daemon. And she's like, "Look, I don't have to embarrass you, but I'm going to embarrass you here in a second." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, right. I saw the visions. You're my queen. Let's do this. You know, all these guys, we're going to kill everybody, you know." And I'm like, ooh, great. She put forth her power that she always had, but she was not using it. So,
yeah.
And sometimes that, and especially for women, I mean, I can imagine during this time, but sometimes it's harder for women to step up and take that leadership role because it's not expected. And like that trader dude, you know, then you got these guys who will come behind you just because you're a woman, not even though that you're the most qualified. That might be true of some other things going on. But I think that once a woman finds her sense of power, then she can own it. So, and she was able to finally step into her power. And, you know, even with Daemon, now she's really forced him to say, am I your queen, or am I still this little girl you're trying to manipulate? And finally, through his trials, he's able to say, you're my queen. So I thought that was pretty cool. David, what did you think?
Well, you know, as I say, she really was trying to find herself throughout this. Ate a little bit of humble pie, was rebuffed, and then got to rebuff. Really well done overall for her, but certainly another strong performance. Everybody in this show just brings it. If there's a bad take, we don't see it. It's on the cutting room floor. They're not in the director's cut. They don't just keep the camera rolling. You get everybody's best. And I just have to say that Emma Darcy, that's the actress's name, she has just really shown, she's shown the evolution of her character in this season. So it's been fantastic to watch. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's not where they don't want to, they're just completely unwilling, so many of these folks, to listen to a queen in this case. And she's letting them know that's a big mistake if they challenge her at this point.
Yeah, and remember she had to smack the dude because he was getting real salty and real ridiculous, and she had to let him know, ooh, maybe I've forgotten to let you know who I am.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of straightened up, you know, the board. But I think that the next season, it'll be interesting to see when Daemon comes back what Mysaria's role is going to be. And if they'll continue this foolishness with her and Rhaenyra, or is she gonna get visits from both Daemon and Rhaenyra? which is, I hope they don't, but I think that it'll be, Mysaria is going to be interesting to me. And we got to see somebody who disappeared, what happened to them, and the question is, what happened? How did he get to where he got? And so I'm interested to see that too. Any final thoughts about this season of House of the Dragon? Let's start with Patrick. Anything you want to add about the books?
No, I mean, like I said, George R. R. Martin, if you're watching this, please finish the last of the Game of Thrones books, please, so you can maybe redo those last 2 seasons that were terrible. Also, I mean, but he does a really good job at making complex characters versus just the usual cookie cutter fantasy heroes you see so often. You got the good guy, you got the bad guy. You may have a lovable rogue who appears bad but gets good, whatever. He puts some really complex things into all his characters, and I do enjoy it a lot. And this has been a really good season so far. The first one, I was not as, there was so much time where they jumped from like a young girl to an old girl or a young woman, and it was really weird. The continuity was bad, and I blame more of the HBO people than I do the George R. R. Martin. But this season's been very, very good, very well done, very linear. Everybody's interesting, even if the names are a little bit confusing sometimes. But man, really, really good. And I recommend watching this to anybody that's watching us. Definitely be watching this. This is a really good, not wasted time.
Right. And David, what'd you think? Your final thoughts of this season?
Well, final thoughts. I think this season really was an improvement on the first season, which was good. But I agree with Pat. It was as we had to change up on the actors from the beginning of the story today. That's an important piece. But the world building that we see here, you just really get into the textures of it. Just the opening has, they're making the the quilts, those pieces, and you're just kind of enmeshed into the cloth work, the thread, if I could use a pun from another show we've talked about that doesn't compare. You're really involved in this. This is good. Now, I will say, as good as this season has been, for me, the season finale, because it's so much of a bridge to season 3, was a bit of a weakness. I would have liked something a little bit more than just everybody ready to, we're at the starting point and we're all about to go charge. But well done, well acted, beautiful stories. Just my hat off to everybody part of this cast. It's an ensemble cast, and everyone is excellent in their roles. It's tremendous on that regard. So a little disappointment with the last episode, but that's because they've had a high standard. These people are great. So watch this whole season again and again and find the little nuggets to kind of, see some of the things that might get missed, some Easter eggs and whatnot, or dragon eggs. And we'll be ready to come 2026. If we're all still here, be looking forward to season 3.
Yeah, and it has been a very wild ride and trying to figure out the pieces. I will say that I think they should have ended with last week's episode, and this one could have been the first episode of the new season.
Yeah.
Because that last episode had everything, charging, and there was dragons, and there was fighting, and there was her being like in her power with the 3 dragons. So that was really kind of the end, and this was season 3 episode 0. What I mean?
Maybe so. That might be a good comparison.
Or
I think that's very apt.
This episode, like in 2025, is like a special teaser. And then when it was ready to pop up in 2026, then people would have been just nuts. So I think it kind of took something away from it, but it still is, light years above some other things that are out there. And now I'm sad. I wish it was 10 episodes instead of 8. And then we could have had, a bigger finale. But, everybody's, their beak is wet for the next season. And that'll be the penultimate season before the finale. So we'll definitely be watching, and we'll definitely want you to be here with us. And thanks for joining us for our special single edition of House of the Dragon review. Season 2's in the bag. So, fellas, say goodnight to the people.
So long,
good night, everybody. There was.
We'll see you next time. We'll see you Saturday. We'll review Our Lady Jane and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Those About to Die on Peacock. So definitely check us out Saturday at our regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you next time. Take care.